Hello everyone, welcome back to P3. Thank you for all the feedback on the last one, really appreciate it and glad I got so many of you thinking in a different way. I'm hoping this podcast does the same. It's slightly different. I'm going to focus today on how do you praise people and the impact that certain types of praise has within the workplace. So this is all based on a great author called Dr. Carol S Dweck. She wrote a great book called Mindset, which I hope you've all come across and read. It's absolutely fantastic. Today's session is actually based on a book that she wrote called Self Theories. She's an incredible author, and this one is slightly more academic than Mindset, but I'd highly recommend grabbing a look. We're focusing here on chapter 8 of this book for today. So, how do you praise, and how different types of praise have an impact on people you work with, your colleagues? It could even be how you talk about yourself as well. So, the idea in self-theories, Carol has this idea that there are essentially two ways of understanding how you see yourself and how you view yourself, theories you have about yourself. The first one is entity theory, and this takes stick figure, which looks at you assess, judge, and manage your feelings about who you are and what you do as a complete whole. For example, it's essentially based on the role that you are doing. So that means that you could be a good salesperson, a sports person, student. It doesn't make a difference, but you identify yourself as being good in that role. So let's put a sports person, just as an example. Okay, but this is how you identify yourself, and that means that you're a good cricket player, you're a good rugby player, you're a good badminton player, hockey player. Those are the things that how you define yourself and how other people define you. Second is effort-based self-theory, which basically looks at the idea that with another stick figure, it's not so much the role that you are defining yourself by, but by the effort you're putting in. So, taking this idea of a sports person or a student, for example, if you're a good student, it's the fact that you enjoy researching, studying, and working through problems until you fix it. It could be that practice is very important to you. It could be that as a salesperson, for example, that role playing on a daily basis helps you to reinforce objection handling. But it's all about effort. Here it's about the role. Here it's about specific effort, right? How do these two ways of looking at yourself have an impact when you get praised? So Carol tested this, and she did a whole range of tests, and I'm really aggressively paraphrasing this, so please go back to this book and read it. So essentially, if we assume there are two ways of identifying yourself, either through entity or effort-based, what Carol wanted to do was to assess the impact of the different kinds of praise that you give people. So entity praise, wow, you're a good sports person, or effort-based praise, or I really enjoyed the specific effort and practice that you put in. So she tested this by having two groups of people who were evenly matched in every way, including whether they thought themselves in entity or effort, plus whether they had high or low confidence in themselves in either of these roles. So there's quite a lot of variables that she had to work through. She then tested for this, created two groups of people. And these two groups of people were tested with a series of tests, which we'll call A1, which were tests that were medium to tough. They were timed, so there had to be a challenge. It wasn't easy, and you had to finish them all, right? You had to complete all the questions. The expected pass rate was 90 to 100%. Okay. So nothing unusual. They did quite a few tests here, so it wasn't just 2 or 3. And again, go back to the book. What happened then is, following on from the original idea, is that how do you praise has an impact on these people. Group A were then given entity-based praise. So I'll put this entity-based praise. And group B were given, as you've guessed it, effort-based praise. So let's say these tests were, in fact, in this case, I think it was maths questions. Group A would then give an entity-based praise, such as, oh, you're a great mathematician, for example. Whereas on the effort score, exactly the same test, these were told, I loved how much effort you put into fixing and solving the problem. I loved how much time you took. I loved how patient you were, and in terms of fixing, in terms of getting to a solution. It didn't matter if you didn't get 100%. In fact, that was good. It wasn't about everybody passing 100%. It was about making sure that roughly everybody passed the test in exactly the same way. They were then given these different types of praise, and then they were given another set of tests, which we'll call B, and these were difficult. These were difficult tests. Everything else was the same. So it was timed, and you had to finish them all. As you can expect, the pass rate here was less, but this was expected as part of the tests. So again, a series of tests here: specific entity praise for Group A, effort praise for Group B. They then all came together again to do these tests, which were difficult, if not very difficult. And then immediately they were again retested with exactly the same level of difficulty as tests A. So medium to tough, but they were not timed. So medium to tough. These were not timed. And you had to finish them all, right? Same as before. So this is where it gets interesting. For Group A, who had passed in exactly the same as everyone else, had been given entity-based praise, who then were given some difficult tests, the pass rates for when they were given exactly the same difficulty were interesting. It was less than 90%, so less than the original test for A1. And even though it wasn't timed, so they didn't actually have to spend as much time, they weren't told to kind of stay there for an hour or something, they even spent less time in terms of trying to solve the problems. Group B, however, their pass rate was greater, if not equal to 90% compared to A1, and they spent more time to finish these tests than even before. This blew my mind. And the 3 things that I wanted to say is that how you praise, be it entity or effort, has a real impact. And it's especially important in, I think, 3 areas. First of all, it matters when things are going well, how you praise. You still focus on the specific effort that they are doing. It's hugely important, because when it doesn't go well, that's when the praise you give has an impact. As you've seen, it's not the fact that it doesn't go well, it's what happens when they go back to normal. So it's when it goes back to normal after a period of difficulty, which I was amazed with. 2, the resilience of those people who are focused on their effort praise, because they weren't seeing, it wasn't about confidence or success at that point, going back to the original point, it was about the specific effort they were putting in. They'd spent more time trying to fix the problem, more time, more effort, which, you read books like Grit, for example. The idea of resilience, of course, is that you don't allow any emotional response to a situation or productivity to drop or quarter drop. And the great thing about resilience here is that a lot of people, when they see themselves as a failure, see themselves as a failure in a role more often than not, which causes their performance to drop, and actually they almost give up, and they kind of give up hope almost. That for me was important. There's a response to failure that I thought was really interesting. And the last thing is, bear in mind how we talk about ourselves and others. It's not just how we give praise to other people, but also how we view ourselves in this way. And that if you do see yourself struggling, focus on the effort you're putting in rather than the outcomes, for example, would be a great way of looking at it. For those of you that have read the mindset book, it'll come no surprise that the effort theory, is what drives a growth mindset. Great. Well, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed that today. How you praise, the impact of how you praise has a huge significance in how people, not just when they're doing well, but also how they recover once they've been through a period of difficulty. So as usual, lots of comments below, please. And my name is Julian Johns. Thank you again.